The prairie stretched wide and unforgiving, a canvas of dust and dying light. A lone rider moved across it, shoulders bent as though the horizon itself pressed down on him. His coat, once an officer's uniform, sagged from his frame, patched with mismatched fabric where bullets had torn through. The horse beneath him limped in rhythm with his own gait. Two creatures bound by fatigue and stubborn will. Behind them lay years of war. Ahead waited something he could not yet name, home, or the hollow echo of it. He had been away too long. The memories clung tighter than the saddle leather beneath his hands. Nights in the trenches, the sharp rattle of rifles, the silence that followed when men stopped screaming. Those ghosts traveled with him, seated invisibly on the saddle's back, whispering of choices made and brothers lost. Each mile across the open land felt like a trial. Would he be judged, forgiven, or forgotten? The first sign of people came at dusk. Lantern light leaking from a saloon window, its glow trembling in the wind like a promise too fragile to keep. He tied his horse and stepped inside, the floorboards groaning in protest beneath his boots. Conversation stilled. Cards lay forgotten in hands. Mugs hovered halfway to lips. The soldier's return had been whispered of, but no one expected him to actually appear, flesh in shadow, eyes hollowed by what he had seen. He moved to the bar. The barkeep, gray-haired and weary-eyed, polished a glass that needed no cleaning. "Been a while," the man muttered, though his voice carried more pity than welcome. A drink was poured without asking, whiskey thick as tar, bitter as regret, at a corner table. A few ranch hands exchanged wary glances. One spat into a tin cup. Another leaned back, muttering low, "War don't end just 'cause the gunfire stops." The words slid through the room, sharp as a knife, and found their mark. The soldier felt them like an accusation, though no name had been spoken. It was a woman at the far end of the bar who broke the silence. Her dress was plain, her gaze sharper than steel. She had lost someone to the same war that had claimed so many. She pushed a second glass toward him, her hand steady. "For the road," she said softly, not out of kindness but recognition. She knew the look in his eyes, the look of someone returned but not restored. He nodded in thanks, but did not drink. Instead, he caught sight of himself in a cracked mirror behind the bar. The reflection startled him more than the silence of the room. His own face, lean, weathered, lined by both sun and sorrow, felt like that of a stranger. The scar that cut from jaw to ear had healed, but the man inside it had not. He remembered what his wife's touch once felt like, how his boy had clutched his hand before he left. Would they see this face and find the man they loved, or only a ruin wearing his skin? The air in the saloon thickened, heavy with smoke and suspicion. A laugh, brittle and cruel, rose from a gambler near the hearth. A hero rides back. "Eh? Tell us, soldier, did you bury all your brothers yourself, or just the ones worth remembering?" The words rang too loud. The soldier's fingers flexed against the rim of his glass, the instinct for violence flickering alive. But he let it pass, let the insult hang in the air until even the gambler's smirk faltered. He had no need to prove himself here. Not tonight. He pushed the glass aside and rose. The room parted for him, not out of respect but unease. Every step carried the weight of judgment unspoken. The prairie wind met him at the door, cool against the heat building in his chest. Outside, the night spread wide, stars brittle as shattered glass. He untied his horse slowly, his hand brushing the animal's mane for steadiness. Behind him, the saloon's laughter restarted, hollow and forced. Ahead, the dirt road stretched into darkness, leading back to the land he once called his own. He felt the pull of it, a place where his son had grown tall without him, where a woman waited with questions sharper than any blade. The soldier mounted, the leather saddle creaking under his weight. The horse shifted, as though sensing its rider's storm. He looked once over his shoulder at the flickering lantern light of the saloon, then forward into the night. The silence of the prairie swallowed him whole. For the first time in years, he was riding not toward war, but toward something far more uncertain. Home. The homestead sat low against the land, a squat house of timber and stone, weathered by years of wind. Smoke coiled from its chimney, but the sight did not ease him. His chest tightened as he approached, each hoofbeat a hammer of doubt. He had pictured this moment countless times in the silence of trenches, yet reality struck harder than any shell. He dismounted with slow care, boots crunching against the dry earth, and stood before the door that once meant safety. It opened before he could knock. A boy, taller than the memory he carried, stared at him. The lad's eyes were familiar, though tempered by suspicion, not recognition. There was no cry of joy, no rush forward. The boy simply watched, wary as though confronted by a stranger. Behind him, a woman stepped into view. Her hair, once braided dark, was threaded with silver now, and her face carried lines carved by waiting. She held herself with stillness, not coldness but restraint, as if allowing her heart no sudden motion. Her voice was steady. "You made it back." He wanted to gather her in his arms, to speak her name like a prayer, but the weight of years pressed between them. Instead, he nodded, his throat too tight for words. She stepped aside, granting entry. The boy lingered in the doorway, gaze flicking from the man's scarred face to the floorboards, then to the horizon behind him, as if deciding whether to let this figure cross the threshold of his life. Inside, the house felt smaller than he remembered. The fire snapped in the hearth, its light licking the walls, but it gave no warmth to the silence. They sat at a table that once rang with laughter. Now, the only sounds was the scrape of cutlery and the faint hiss of burning wood. He tried to speak, but each word stumbled before it reached his lips. His wife, still his wife, though distance had made her seem a widow, kept her eyes on her plate. The boy chewed with careful slowness, stealing glances that carried both curiosity and fear. When the soldier finally spoke, it was only to say, "I'm home." The words sounded thin, almost dishonest, for he felt more ghost than man. His wife's hand stilled, her fingers tightening around her fork. "Home," she repeated, but the word trembled, heavy with all the nights she had carried the household alone, with all the days she had buried hope. Later, when the boy had gone to his bed, she faced him fully. Her eyes, dark and sharp as the prairie at midnight, did not soften. "You're back, but you're not the same. War takes more than years. It takes the man who left." He lowered his gaze, shame pressing down like chains. "I fought to return. Every step, every breath was for this." His voice cracked. "For you?" "For him." Her silence lingered, broken only by the fire's collapse into embers. Then quietly, "Then you must prove it. Not to me, but to him. He needs a father, not a shadow." That night, sleep betrayed him. He woke with his knife in hand, sweat drenching his shirt. The room swam with phantoms of the battlefield. He caught sight of his boy standing in the doorway, pale and rigid, witnessing the madness in his father's eyes. The boy slipped away without a word, but the wound left behind cut deeper than steel. In the following days, the soldier walked through town. He saw familiar faces turn hard, old comrades who had not fared as well shuffle like beggars. Widows clutched thin children, their farms seized by men who fattened themselves on grief. At the center of it all stood the Baron, his wealth swelling from land bought cheap from the broken. The soldier recognized a new war here, one without drums or rifles, but with victims just as many. A ranch hand warned him quietly, "Keep your head low. Baron don't take kindly to heroes thinking they're needed." The warning carried the weight of truth, but also cowardice. The soldier felt the pull of choice, retreat into the fragile quiet of his homestead, or stand against the rot spreading through the land. That evening, he returned home to find his boy mending a broken fence. The lad worked with clenched jaw, determination hardened by the absence of guidance. The soldier stepped closer, picked up a hammer, and set a post firm into the ground. His boy looked at him, measuring, not yet trusting, but not dismissing him either. The sun slipped low, casting their shadows long across the field. For the first time since his return, the soldier felt a hint of belonging, though fragile as dry grass and wind. Yet beneath that moment, a question gnawed. Could he hold on to it, or would the storm rising in town tear it all apart? The first crack in the fragile peace came sudden and brutal. A neighbor's cry pierced the dusk, carrying across the fields like a wounded animal. The soldier dropped his tools, instincts burning awake before thought could follow. He ran, legs churning through dust, the boy trailing behind, eyes wide with alarm. The scene struck him like deja vu of battle. The widow who had once shared a kind word in the saloon lay struggling in the dirt outside her cabin. Two of the Baron's men circled her like wolves, their laughter sharp as broken glass. They sought to remind her that her land was not her own, that she owed debts impossible to repay. Her daughter, barely more than a child, clung to her mother's skirts, face streaked with tears. The soldier's voice came low, steady, the same voice he had used to lead men under fire. Let them go. The hired guns turned. Their sneers faltered for just a moment at the sight of him, broad-shouldered despite the limp, eyes like gunmetal. Then came the jeers. War's done. Soldier, best go home, for you earn yourself a grave. One drew a pistol slow, savoring the threat. The soldier did not flinch. His hand moved faster, iron whispering free of its holster. The shot cracked through the evening, scattering crows from the trees. The first man fell, clutching his leg, howling as blood darkened his trousers. The second lunged, knife flashing. The soldier met him with brutal precision, steel against flesh, ending the fight in a heartbeat. Silence pressed down after, broken only by the widow's ragged breath. His son stood frozen, staring at the ruin left behind. The boy's awe and fear braided together, impossible to untangle. For the first time, he had seen the father behind a ghost, fierce, merciless, alive with the violence of war. The soldier holstered his weapon with deliberate calm, but inside he felt the old hunger stir, the one he had tried to bury. Word traveled fast. By nightfall, the town buzzed with the tale. The soldier had spilled the Baron's blood by proxy. At the saloon, whispers thickened. Some called him protector, a man brave enough to stand when others bowed. Others cursed his name, saying he had dragged trouble to their doors. The truth mattered little. The Baron had heard, and that alone was enough to seal his fate. The summons came at dawn, delivered by riders whose silence carried menace sharper than their rifles. The message was plain: leave town by sundown or face the consequences. No man defied the Baron, and lived long after. The soldier stood in the doorway of his home, reading the threat aloud. His wife's face hardened, though her hands trembled at her sides. "I begged you not to stir old wars," she said. "You brought their wrath to our door." He answered quietly, "If I tear away now, they'll come again. For us, for every soul too weak to stand." His son listened from the corner, eyes flicking between them, torn between the safety of silence and the pull of courage. Later that night, under a sky pricked with cold stars, the boy crept to his father's side. The soldier sat alone, polishing the revolver as though preparing for confession. The boy asked, voice small but steady, "Did you fight to kill them, Lord Protector?" The soldier paused, met his son's gaze. "I fought because no one else would. War teaches you to fight, son, but home teaches you what's worth fighting for." The boy absorbed the words, something shifting inside him. Not yet acceptance, not yet forgiveness, but the seed of respect. By the week's end, others began to gather, men who had been broken by war, outcasts who had been pushed to the edges, even a displaced family who had lost everything to the Baron's greed. They came not for glory but for survival, bound together by the soldier's defiance. The widow stood among them, her daughter at her side, their eyes lit with fragile hope. The soldier looked at them and felt the weight of command settle on his shoulders again. He had not sought it, but it had found him. This was no army, only the discarded remnants of a wounded land, yet in their faces he saw something fierce, something worth saving. The storm was coming, carried on the wind like a scent of gunpowder. He could feel it in the stillness of the prairie, in the way the town hushed when the Baron's name was spoken. His road back was no longer just to his family. It led straight into the heart of battle once more, but this time the field was his home. The soldier stood tall, resolve etched in every scar. The next war would not be fought in trenches, but in the dust of the town itself, and he would not ride alone. The storm broke at dawn, not from the sky, but from the earth itself. Riders poured into the valley, the Baron's men clad in dust and cruelty, rifles strapped to their backs. The town held its breath as shutters closed and doors locked. The soldier stood at the edge of the street, his ragtag band behind him, Widow, outcasts, scarred veterans, and his own boy clutching a rifle too long for his arms. Their faces bore fear, but also a stubborn light that would not be extinguished. The Baron rode in at the head of his men, seated high in a saddle draped with silver trim, his arrogance shining like armor. He reined his horse before the soldier, smirking as though victory were already his. "You should have kept to your home," he said, voice smooth, venom wrapped in silk. "Now you'll lose it all." The soldier answered not with words but with silence, the kind that stretched and thickened, until even the Baron's sneer faltered. Behind him, the widow raised her chin. The boy shifted his grip on the rifle, determination firming his small shoulders. The air felt charged, every heartbeat a drumbeat of war. The first shot split the morning. It was not clear who fired it, only that chaos followed. Gunfire roared down the street, echoing like thunder off the wooden facades. The soldier moved with the precision of memory, each step and shot honed by years of survival. Around him, his unlikely allies fought with desperate courage. A veteran swung his crutch like a weapon, an outlaw fired from the rooftop. The widow guarded her child with a pistol steady as steel. Smoke thickened, choking the air, while the prairie wind whipped sparks into flame. A hay cart caught fire, and soon the blaze crept across the street, painting the battle in violent orange. Amid the inferno, the soldier spotted the Baron dismounting, pistol drawn, striding toward him with hatred carved into every line of his face. They met in the center of the street, two men carrying the weight of lives ruined. The fight was raw and close, fists colliding, boots kicking up dust. The soldier felt the ache of old wounds. The pull was limp, but his fury kept him upright. The Baron's strikes were wild, his strength born of greed rather than grit. Blood slicked their hands as they grappled, the fire's glow searing their silhouettes into legend. At last, the soldier pinned him, revolver pressed against the Baron's temple. The world seemed to hold its breath. The boy stood nearby, eyes wide, waiting to see what kind of man his father truly was. The soldier's finger hovered on the trigger, the weight of vengeance pressing hard. He could end it here, cleanse the land with a single shot. But the faces around him, his wife at the doorway, the widow clutching her child, the broken men who had followed him, anchored him. Killing would make him no different from the war that had hollowed him. Slowly, with trembling control, he lowered the weapon. The Baron spat curses, but the power had drained from him. His empire of fear was ash, crumbling with every witness who saw him fall and rise again only to be spared. The surviving townsfolk emerged from their homes, their silence heavy, their eyes wide. In that moment, the soldier understood. Mercy carried more weight than blood. He bound the Baron's hands, left him to the people he had tormented, and turned away. The battle was finished, though the land still burned. As dawn pushed the smoke aside, the soldier found his son standing close. The boy's voice cracked as he said, "Father." A single word, fragile but true, filling the hollow space between them. The soldier felt the tightness in his chest ease, a victory more profound than any won with bullets. His wife stepped forward, eyes wet, and this time when she touched his hand, she did not pull away. The prairie, though scarred by fire, gleamed gold under the rising sun. Fields stretched endless, carrying both loss and promise. The soldier stood among those who had chosen him, who had fought not for conquest, but for belonging. He had traveled far from the man who left for war, farther still from the ghost who returned. Now, at last, he was simply a man who had found his way home. And though the horizon whispered of storms yet to come, he no longer feared them. For the first time in years, he was not alone